Hi everyone, Danny here, and welcome to Spinelli Speaks and another Sunday night summary with Edward Rutherfurd's Sarum. If you are following along, you know we are at the second half of the book, so we are getting through it. So make sure you hit that subscribe button as well as the notification bell. Like and comment on this video. I would love to chat with you down in the comments. We are doing these every Sunday night at 6 p.m., but if you have missed a video and a summary, please feel free to drop into the description. I have a full playlist there for you, which has all of the previous chapters. I also have the playlist for London in case you're looking for some more Rutherfurd reads. In today's summary, we'll be discussing Chapter 9, titled The Death, and I think you can guess what that's going to be about. This chapter was a really nice 57-page chapter, so I was able to get through it quite nicely. Plus, the material was quite interesting. I especially loved how Rutherfurd opened the chapter. It was very mysterious, and at first, you really didn't know what was happening until it kind of dawned on you. And if you've read Rutherfurd before, it was a very familiar way to open up a chapter about the plague. That's right. This chapter is all about the plague of 1348. So we have in this chapter a span of time, but most of the chapter is seen in 1348. The chapter then does span until 1382, but it's done in kind of a different way. So we have the first part of the chapter that goes through the plague and how that felt to the characters. And then like halfway through the chapter, we have one character who is kind of reminiscing about what had happened in the years leading up to 1382. So let's get all of the characters out of the way first. We first meet a Peter Wilson, who is the son of Walter Wilson. And Walter Wilson is a descendant of that Tep line. And if you recall, the Wilsons and the Shockleys, and quite frankly, pretty much everyone in town, they have a family feud, but very specifically, a very strong generational family feud between the Wilsons and the Shockleys. Then we have Gilbert de Godefroy, who is still the landowner of that Avonsford area. He is the central person that takes care of the land, and he has land up on the hill. He still is a landowner to the mill. His wife is named Rose, and then they have a young son, Thomas, who's 15, and he is away basically learning to be a knight, so he is a squire. Then we have William Shockley and his family. It is known that he has about 6 children. Now, he is the nephew of Mary from the last chapter, so he is the current owner of the farmstead, and the Wilsons are who tend to that land, and he and his family live in town. And lastly, in this first part of the chapter, we have the Mason family. So that's of that Numa line. They're still carpenters. They're still stoneworkers, stonemasons. But they have a unique family unit. So before the chapter starts, Richard, who was the patriarch, he had passed. And the family that is left is unique in that before the chapter, of course, he had been married and had 2 sons, John and Nicholas. That wife passed, and he remarried to a wife, Agnes, who we see in this chapter. And like I said, he passed before the chapter. So in this chapter, we have his 2 sons from a previous marriage, John and Nicholas, his then wife, so their stepmother, Agnes, and then it says that she has like 3 more children. So they form a family unit. So what we really see in this first part of the chapter is how the Black Death comes to the island of Britain, so to England, in a very unique way, as I mentioned before, which I found very amusing. I did like that a lot. And at first I wasn't catching on, and then as soon as a certain thing happened, I was like, oh, I know what this is, and then it's revealed. And I love that kind of writing, and I find that it's very unique with these kind of chapters because I feel like Rutherfurd did this in the Black Death chapter in London as well. So I like that about his writing. I like that he likes to be kind of like um, tongue-in-cheek about, oh, not that he's being tongue-in-cheek about the Black Death, but just how he's introducing it. I also really appreciate how he interjects a lot of scientific information about the Black Death and how it spread and the differences between like the bubonic and the pneumonic, if I'm saying that correctly, and how like some spread from being bitten by the flea and some spread by the actual contact with an infected person. So I really enjoyed like the information. Should we not have known that? Should we have forgotten it from years past of being in school? It was really nice to have those little introductions of scientific material that helped you understand like how did the plague spread as quickly as it did and how did it kill so many people. And it was really fascinating. And then you have the fictional character side of it where it really goes to show like how quickly it spread, what people thought of it, how they prepared for it, what they thought they were doing to keep themselves from dying. And it's really just amazing to and quite frankly very grateful to be living in the day and age that I am because they had no clue, absolutely no clue how to prevent themselves from getting the plague. I mean, at all. Everything they did, and there were methods shown in this chapter of like how they were trying to help infected people. There were methods of how they were trying to just keep away from it in general. And only one character did a really good job of keeping their family safe through the chapter, and that was Agnes Wilson. And I will say, as far as our discussion has been continuing with the role of women in these chapters, I would say this was a very strong female character. She had a strong will about her. She did not falter when pressed by men, and she protected her family, at least in the first part of the chapter. And her whole thing was isolation, like not being around anyone else, not going into town back and forth. And we see how her family makes it to the other end through that year of the plague. So I thought that was really fascinating. That, like I said, the first part of the chapter, that's all we really deal with is understanding how the plague got into London and specifically into this Salisbury, Avonsford area. We also see how the communication was. We see how people interacted with one another. And we also see how they dealt with not only infected people, but then afterward, the people that had passed. So we have complete turmoil and chaos in the beginning of the chapter. Now, in the second part of the chapter, we get a very interesting perspective of the plague and its aftermath through the character Edward Wilson. Now, I hadn't mentioned him before because he wasn't mentioned in the beginning of the chapter. However, in the second part of the chapter, he is pretty much the forerunner of the fictional character storyline. And he is a son of Walter Wilson, one of only two surviving sons. So throughout the plague portion, you hear of everyone who dies. So a lot of the people, I'm not going to say who, I'm going to leave that up to you so you can read that. But obviously, we're aware that a lot of people pass. I think it's mentioned 1/3 of the population was decimated because of this plague. So a lot of people have passed, and because of that, we have a lot of things that change the narrative for England at this time. And we see this through Edward Wilson's kind of recollection. So what we have is a quick understanding that he is thinking about how this is all passed in that 1382 lens. So everything that we learn in the second part of the chapter is all being recollected. So he's saying, oh, I can't believe all this has happened because of one thing. So, and that one thing being the Black Death. So Edward and his brother Elias are the two surviving children of Walter Wilson. Walter Wilson also survives, and he is out for blood. Like I mentioned before, he and the Shockley family, and via kind of extension, the de Godefroy's family, and extension, the Mason family, he has family feuds with all of them. And he is going to be taking them down. He has devised a cunning and just really backstabbing, just despicable plan to basically ruin all of these families and reap all of the benefits. And at the time, Edward Wilson, his son, is a young man. He's 17, I believe. And at first he's kind of, wow, like this gotta be wrong, right? But he continues to go along with it and therefore learns all of these backdoor dealings, these almost blackmailish things that he can do to get people to do what he wants. He's also a lot nicer than Walter. So in some instances, he's playing chess almost. So he'll be friends with some people and not with others. And then when maybe those friendships get tested, then he's able to work with that because he's always been a friend. So the second half of the chapter is like jaw-dropping with the amount of dealings that the Wilsons undergo that essentially get them back certain land. They end up with way more than they ever would have ever gotten in their life that they were living prior to the Black Death. And it's at first you're like, oh my gosh, this man is so deplorable. I can't believe it. And then you get a tinge of like, well, but you know, he's been wronged before, so it's kind of like now it's his time. But then at the same time, you're like, but he's doing it so, like, he is doing it with malice. And it's hard because in your head, you're like, well, I mean, like, he's using his brain and he's getting these things by using his cunning. And but at the same time, I was just like, but what is your question? Is he good or bad? Is that the question? Does that matter? Because you have to understand, after the Black Death and all these people die, right? We have all of this land that needs to be tended, but there's no one to do it. So now people who work are getting paid more. People who own the land are at the mercy of who can tend it. You have people who are no longer in office. You have people who are no longer owners of their land, who it's like a random or young person who ends up inheriting, so you can easily manipulate them. So lots of stuff happens that makes it so Walter Wilson is able to just literally plow through and take over a lot of land, a lot of property, a lot of buildings. He makes a fortune. It is a very interesting chapter. So in this chapter, I firmly believe like it's the death and the Wilsons. Like that is what this chapter is about. So very interesting and exciting back end of the chapter. And we, again, get to learn all of this through Edward's eyes. We also learn a little bit about what's happening with the church. Not as interesting as all of the other stuff, but is there nonetheless. And as we continue to move forward, we know that there are more plagues coming. It's not the only plague that affects the Europe and England, but and there will be more coming. So maybe we'll see more in the future. But right now, the Wilsons are on high. And, the Shockleys are not destitute. The Masons aren't destitute. The, de Godefroy, if I can ever say the name, de Godefroys, they're not, no one is, completely ruined. But the Wilsons are definitely on top. And ultimately, that is the chapter. Like I said, it's the Black Death and the Wilsons. So a fun chapter. Our next chapter, titled The Rose, is, I believe, a mere 20 pages. So be very excited to dip into that one for next week. But until then, I hope you all are reading something fantastic. If it's not this one, I hope it's something equally as fantastic. Take care, stay safe, and as always, you know how it goes. Happy reading. Bye.